Hello and welcome to the sixth video in our series on executive coaching. I'm Harry Petropoulos, one of the founding directors of Red Pill Performance Consultants, which is an executive coaching firm established in 2004 with offices in Sydney and in Perth. You may recall in the last video I talked about some of the qualities you should be looking for when selecting an executive coach and how to go about establishing those qualities. In this video, I'd like to talk about a phenomenon referred to as coach-dependency. Now, you know that executive coaching primarily focuses on developing leadership capabilities and new ways of thinking and acting that tend to generalise to other situations and roles. And just as importantly, executive coaching also focuses on learning how to learn. In other words, developing skills and habits of self-reflection that ensure that learning will continue well after the coaching process finishes. To this point, the more progressive coaches strive hard to minimise the potential for coach dependency. In other words, the phenomenon of executive over-reliance on executive coaches. Coach dependency is a term that's used to describe coaching situations where perhaps the coachee experiences the coach and the coaching process itself as a bit of a crutch without which they can't normally function. Now, in most cases where this phenomenon occurs, the coach is usually oblivious to it until it's sometimes too late to retrieve the situation. In other situations, the coach may be either consciously or unconsciously encouraging and sometimes even exploiting the situation by extending the coaching program far beyond what's beneficial or even necessary. Coach dependency is usually a good indication that the coaching process has somehow derailed along the way and morphed into something else, which is not really coaching. Coach dependency typically finds coachees seeking to outsource their decision making to the coach. Okay, so how do you know when you have a coach dependency situation if you're a coach? Typically, the coachee's developmental progress plateaus early on, and the coachee usually insists on running increasingly more and more decisions by the coach before implementing. I also find you tend to get more phone calls between the formal coaching sessions, and these calls are typically made under the veil of the coachee perhaps wanting to clarify some aspect of their coaching homework with you, the coach. In reality, these calls are really cries for advice masquerading as something else. At its worst, coach dependency leads to decision paralysis. That is, the coachee is unable to make any substantive decisions without first consulting their executive coach. Now, as an executive coach, the first place to look when it comes to identifying possible causes of coach dependency is usually the mirror. As executive coaches, we need to ask ourselves what we've done to foster this and, more importantly, how we're going to fix it. In an earlier video, I referred to the work of Heinz Kohut and his views about the two universal psychological needs, the need to be understood and the need to be admired. In that earlier video, I spent quite a bit of time discussing the primary need, the need to be understood, and the importance of listening in terms of supporting that need. In this video, I'd like to focus a bit more on the second universal human psychological need, which is the need to be admired. We need to remember that as coaches, we're not immune to these powerful need states. In addition to receiving adulations for some high achievement, another powerful expression of admiration that affects all of us is experienced through the process of being consulted or being asked for advice. In reality, we all like to be asked for our advice or opinion on something. In coaching scenarios, particularly where the coach is struggling with some form of equivalence issue, which I find happens when you're coaching celebrity CEOs or other high-powered, confident leaders, being asked for advice can be quite seductive and at times even intoxicating. But you could ask, what's wrong with allowing a bit of coach dependency to creep into a coaching process? What's the big deal about that? Well, I think there are several problems here. First, you're selling coaching services under false pretenses. That is, whereas coaching is designed to facilitate the coach's own development of solutions to challenges that they encounter, you're inadvertently arresting the coachee's personal development by allowing yourself to usurp control of some of the decision-making functions. More importantly, unlike consultants that spend considerable time researching and understanding key business and industry drivers and critical success factors before making recommendations for change, you may be exposing the coachee and or their organisation to considerable risk by interceding your views, either directly or by default, without a thorough understanding of the underlying issues of the situation. In other words, while well-intentioned, you may in fact be offering your coaching client bad advice, which exposes not only your coaching client and their organisation to considerable risk, it also exposes you and your own company to reputational damage and even potential litigation down the track. Thirdly, and probably most importantly, as an executive coach, you're bound by ethical guidelines. And I think it's bad practice, bordering on unethical, to keep billing someone who's become dependent on your intervention. So how do you retrieve a coaching assignment that's showing signs of coach dependency? Well, first of all, you need to look for telltale signs, such as failure by the coachee to complete agreed homework assignments, the generation of multiple options, but reticence on the coachee's part in terms of narrowing down the list without your input, and the coachee always asking your views on issues without first having completed their own analysis of the situation. There's also numerous phone calls, as I mentioned before, between face-to-face coaching sessions, and they're kind of the key telltale signs that I could think about. When that happens, as the coach, you need to push back. One way of pushing back is to not schedule subsequent coaching sessions unless, for instance, all homework agreed to at the last coaching session has in fact been completed. You can also push back by avoiding giving your views and asking questions like, so which of these options do you think will provide the best solution going forward? Or what are the key criteria against which you'll be evaluating these options? If after a couple of sessions you feel you're not getting traction, the best advice is to terminate the program or refer the coachee to someone else. But the best strategy to avoid coach dependency in the first place is to clarify boundaries and expectations up front at the commencement of the coaching assignment. Another good practice is to start with relatively low-level issues that the coachee can develop confidence around before progressing to, say, more substantive issues in the coaching dialogue. Most progressive executive coaches today are aware of the potential for coach dependency and seek to mitigate this by focusing the last 3 or 4 sessions in, say, a 12-session block on the process of self-coaching techniques. Self-coaching involves the coachee's ability to apply the techniques learned during the coaching program to situations at work without having the coach as a sounding board. In fact, in self-coaching, the coachee develops their own self-talk or inner voice that effectively allows them to have that coaching conversation in their head. All right, so what's the upshot of all this? I guess in general, the coaching relationship in organisations should not continue beyond achievement of specific objectives unless other business objectives have been identified or unless the coach has been promoted to a significant new role. But even under these circumstances, I tend to be reluctant to extend coaching to someone who's just completed a coaching block because it just lends itself to the potential for coach dependency. As a forcing strategy to prevent coach dependency, most executive coaches terminate contact at the conclusion of the coaching program. In preparation for this, the last few coaching sessions in more enlightened coaching programs tend to focus on the self-coaching techniques that I mentioned before, and these self-coaching techniques are usually focused on with considerable discussion and debate. Okay, that's coach dependency. In the next video, I'd like to discuss the actual coaching mindset that a coach should walk into a coaching scenario with. I hope you can join us for that one. Thanks for watching this particular video today.